All right, let's talk about something that sounds kind of dry, but is actually fascinating: corporate governance. Think of it like the secret instruction manual for the world's biggest companies. It's what decides everything, from who really calls the shots in the boardroom to how a CEO ends up with a multi-million-dollar paycheck. So, yeah, let's dive right in.
I mean, it seems like a simple question, right? But the answer, well, it's way more complicated than you'd probably guess. Is it the flashy CEO? The original founder? What about the big money investors? We are going to unpack all of that.
So, here's the key takeaway. Corporate governance isn't just some dusty rule book sitting on a shelf. Nope, it's the actual operating system, the DNA, that dictates how a company behaves. It really is the difference between success and total failure. It's the how they do business, not just what they do.
Okay, so if we're going to figure out who's really running the show, we have to start in the most powerful room in the whole company. Yep, we're heading into the boardroom.
This is basically the high command, the board of directors. Their job is to oversee the entire operation, to make sure the ship is sailing in the right direction. But the big question is, who are these people who actually gets a seat at this table?
Well, a board is usually made up of two distinct groups. First, you've got the insiders. These are your executive directors, people like the CEO and the finance director. They're in the trenches, running the company day in and day out. But to keep things balanced, you also have the outsiders. These are the non-executive directors. They're brought in to offer a fresh perspective, an outside view. And sometimes these outsiders are really powerful, like big pension funds who want to make sure their investment is safe.
And just a little fun fact here, this whole one board system isn't the only way to do it. Not at all. If you look at Germany, for example, they do things differently. They actually have two boards. There's a management board that handles the day-to-day stuff, and then a totally separate, more senior supervisory board whose whole job is to watch over them. It's a different setup, but the goal is exactly the same: making sure someone is always keeping an eye on things.
And this whole idea of oversight brings us to one of the biggest, most fundamental debates in all of corporate governance. Just how much power should a single person be allowed to have?
And really, it all boils down to this one question: should the chairman and the chief executive officer, the two most powerful jobs in the company, be held by the same person, or should you split them up? You can see the logic on both sides, right? On one hand, you split the roles because, hey, you don't want to concentrate way too much power in one person's hands. It's all about checks and balances. But on the other hand, some argue that combining the roles gives the company a much stronger, more decisive leader. So there's no single right answer here. It's a huge strategic choice for any company.
All right, now let's get to the really juicy part, the topic that always grabs the headlines: money. More specifically, how the folks at the very top are getting paid.
So when the company is crushing it, the top executives usually get rewarded. We're talking higher salaries for sure, but also a big one called share options. Basically, this gives them the right to buy company shares later on at a super cheap price. The whole idea, or at least the official argument, is that it's a powerful incentive. If they make the company more valuable, their own reward gets bigger too. But as you can probably imagine, not everyone is a fan of this. Critics often throw around the term fat cats to describe these executives, and that term really captures the public feeling that some of these pay packages are just way over the top. Which brings up a pretty obvious question, doesn't it? Rewarding success is one thing, but what happens when the company tanks, when performance is terrible? And this is where things get really controversial, because believe it or not, they might still get rewarded. Rewarded for failure. Yeah, it sounds completely backwards, but it happens. How? Well, it usually comes in the form of a massive severance payout, sometimes called a golden parachute. So you can have a situation where an executive presides over a complete disaster, leaves the company, and still walks away with a check for millions. And to give you a little perspective on why this is such a hot-button issue, just look at this number. In the UK, over the last 5 years, the pay for top executives has shot up 3 times faster than the pay for the average worker. 3 times! That one stat tells you pretty much everything you need to know about why this debate gets so heated. So, if the pay can be this controversial, you have to ask, who is signing off on these deals? Who makes the decision? And more importantly, is anybody trying to stop it? Okay, so officially, here's how it's done. The board forms a special little group called the Remuneration Committee. and it's their one job to figure out and decide on the pay for the top executives.
But that tidy internal process is starting to get some serious pushback from the outside. The actual owners of the company, the shareholders, are starting to stand up and demand to have a say in all of this.
And how are they doing that? Well, the main idea being pushed is to give shareholders a direct vote on executive pay. It's a trend that's really picking up steam, especially in places like the UK. And when you think about it, it's a pretty powerful way to hold the board accountable, right?
So when you step back and look at the whole picture, you see that corporate governance is really about a fundamental conflict. Is the goal to create super strong, decisive leadership to drive success no matter what? Or is the goal to make sure there's fairness and accountability for everybody involved? Is it about leadership or is it about fairness? There's no easy answer here. It's just this constant, tricky balancing act between power and responsibility